I still can't believe that Eva's husband got us to like dance in that promo, stand up by ourselves.
I know, right? That was quite something. You got some moves there, Berglund.
I'm gonna
Which
need to
Berglund?
teach.
Berglund.
Oh, it makes my day.
Before we begin, we're going to start with love, which is on my shirt. Welcome everyone to episode number 14. I can't believe it. We started this journey in 2021, January 2021, and we are now officially on our 14th episode. And Eva and I were just talking in advance of our recording today, just how proud we are of our commitment to this vlog. I think some of the great messages that we've been able to explore together. Now, I will say to, and I won't say viewers and watchers, because Eva called me out on that last time. Are you a viewer? Are you a watcher? No, that's one and the same. What?
A listener?
Yeah, a viewer, a listener, but you know what? You do you. That's one of the things we love about working together is you be you.
So we also have been doing, getting different guests, and we're going to introduce a very important guest to you in just a few moments. That we've been joking that we only have 125 subscribers. We're very proud of that 125. We've earned every single one, every like, every share. Our hope, obviously, is to continue to grow. So we would appreciate if you do press the subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. We are, you can watch this on YouTube, and we're also now on Spotify. So what is Pithy Musings all about? We put the funk back into being human, both at work and leadership and organizations and in community. One of the things that we talked about for 2022 was to be pithier, which means just getting real and raw. Lastly, before I hand it over to Eva, this vlog is not about organizations. It's not about our personal lives. It's about looking at the whole human being. So with that, I am Casey Berglund. I am principal of an organization by the name of Talk Talk, and I am based in the beautiful city of Calgary. I'm gonna do something different here, Eva. I looked up Calgary. Just because I always say Banff, it's 45 minutes from my back door. I'm going to give our viewers, listeners, watchers, whatever, a new tidbit about Calgary. So did you know this, that Calgary was named after Calgary on the Isle of Mull in Scotland, United Kingdom? Eva, who are you?
You don't say
A.
Well, and also a big shout out to, we've had clients, community, family, friends, people from all over who send us emails and offer really great comments, great feedback. Keep it coming. We invite it. We welcome it. We love it. We have someone really, really special who has the same initials as Casey Berglund, Casey Berglund. So it's when I call either of them CB in a text chain, which one? Just needing to clarify. And so we're really excited to welcome Casey. The story of how any of us met is just so fascinating. And talk about just no coincidence, something happened in the universe. And it's very special to have Casey Berglund here. Casey Berglund is here to explore the intersection of our inner genius, our purpose, our embodiment, which is a phenomenally fascinating space, and why these matter for a healthier humanity. Because that's really what Pithy Musings is all about. We want to help making being human a whole lot better. And gosh, in the past couple of years, if that's been any proof at all, there's a real craving from lots and lots of folks from around the world for that. Casey is a former dietitian, a yoga teacher turned purpose-driven business coach and embodiment guide. She started Worthy and Well, her organization, in 2015 after a life-changing embodied experience that connected her with her deeper purpose. It offered her what she calls potent clarity on her next steps almost instantly. Casey shares, prior to that moment, I'd spent months feeling off in my body, uncertain in my relationship, and stuck in my job. Does anyone relate to that? So Casey tells her story beautifully on her own podcast, The Purpose Map, and you can find her on letyourbodylead.com, as well as her TED Talk, which was called Let Your Body Lead. I tell you, it literally brought me to my knees with her energy and her spirit and her soul just shining on through. Just gorgeous. Welcome, Casey.
Welcome.
It's such a delight to be here and to be welcomed with that introduction. You're the best. This is so fun.
And for those that are tuning in, Casey and I are trying to figure out if we are related, because we do have the same last name. And there's only like 50 Berglunds in Canada. I looked it up this morning. So my guess is
true?
It's true. So the chances are pretty high that we're some kind of second cousins or something.
Well, lifetimes ago, we definitely, spent some time in the woods together or something. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. Around a fire, sharing stories. Who knows?
That's right.
Well, there's something, and there's actually something in that comment, Casey, because you have a very strong sense of intuition. I've had the gift of seeing you in action in different moments. Your intuition guides so much of how you live, how you lead, how you serve. What is your intuition about the connection that you and Carolyn have?
What's coming to me as you ask that question is like, well, what's happening right now, my intuition about my connection with Carolyn, I keep saying Caroline.
That's okay.
Carolyn, she's like a sister, a soul sister, a cousin, I don't know. And I can't even say her name properly. Yeah. My intuition more than anything is just that we were meant to meet in this moment in time. I feel like in your introduction, Eva, you talked about for a healthier humanity, and like those are definitely your words. I don't use those words. And when you said them, it was like, ooh, resonance, different words for a similar purpose. And there's so much happening in the world, and I feel like what I'm noticing in my own life, after feeling like a lone wolf, feeling like my intuition is like guiding me and me alone, and or what I do is unique to me, but other people don't get it. I've had that kind of experience. And lately, in the last few months, especially, since meeting you, Eva, since meeting you, Carolyn, I'm seeing how I'm being guided toward really powerful groups of women. And we are collectively creating a healthier humanity. Women are doing that. Women are doing that big time. Women are holding a lot of, I think, the burden and the purpose of like shifting the energy in the world. So I'm making this a long story, but I feel like we're here because we're meant to be here now, because there's a need for a collective, intuitive group of integrated, healing humans. It's a journey to create the ripples of love, like on your shirt, Carolyn.
Yeah.
So synchronistic moment, right? Like I texted you today being like, oh my gosh, the universe is going to explode with love this afternoon when we come together. I didn't know Carolyn was wearing a love shirt, but of course she was.
Of course. And I think you're hitting on something really interesting, Casey, around energy. I think, in my career, I've been met with not such great positive energy, particularly around women. So I've experienced this mean girls business or uber competitive business. And in the last couple of years, I've made a very mental mind shift where I no longer have space for that. And since that moment in which I made that decision, the world has changed. And so I feel like I'm attracting like-minded, not just women, but people into my orbit, and people that truly have a care for what I'm doing and want to help. So when you highlight the fact that there's this collective energy, I think it's likely, and I'd love to get your opinion, because you had a shift at some point and said, that's what I want to attract into my universe, my orbit.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I think probably the listener, viewer, watcher, you know, if you are a woman, this could be true across genders. I don't think it really matters. Just living in the world, there's a common energy of competition that comes from a scarcity perspective. You know, I think that's what drives corporate culture, leadership. It's like, we got to fight to get to the top. And there's, I think, a certain way that it shows up among women that is different than how it shows up among men. And I think it's absolutely necessary to make a shift at some point from that scarcity, I'm all alone, I have to like fight for my space, to like, there's enough pie to go around. We can all have space. Space is abundant and infinite. And I definitely had a moment of, I think, multiple moments that built over time that led to me being more open to receiving support from other women. I had this fear for a long time, and part of my kind of core limiting perspective of outshining other women or worry about stepping on other women's toes. Yeah. And so when that worry is like forward, it's like I attract these circumstances where I like go big and then I totally shrink. And it's like that confirmation bias at play. And then something shifted and I started to attract really powerful women who are like, oh, you're not too big for me. I can handle you. And also like, thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for showing me what's also in me. Thank you for like elevating my capacity to grow and share and have meaningful conversations and do meaningful work, you know? So you two are totally in that sphere for me.
Oh, same. The feeling is very mutual. And it's interesting when you ask that tipping point, Carolyn, around when there's something in the energy field, whatever we want to call it, where we have a choice to gravitate towards that which feels magnetic and positive, maybe even impactful and important, or the opposite, and we start to listen to it. And Casey, since learning more about you and your work, it's interesting. I was sharing right before you hopped onto the call with Carolyn that I had this really interesting moment. Over the past few years, I've been exposed to somatic work. I've been a big fan of the idea of the wisdom of up here, which we're so dominated by. We cultivate it so much. We're rewarded so much for it at a cost, I believe, through to the wisdom of the heart, the wisdom of intuition, and the wisdom of the body. And that really caused me to start to really narrow my focus in a really positive way, on purpose, on the relationships I would cultivate, the decisions that I would make, the business that I would say yes to, all of these things. Since meeting you, you've almost challenged me with, maybe not even knowing it, or maybe you did, to go even deeper in that. There was a defining moment where you said, sometimes you're around buzzing energy, that in 8 hours, this buzzing energy is doing so much, but with the embodied energy, you could do it in 2 hours. And it wasn't an arrogant comment. You had done the work to go deep into that embodied leadership space to lead that way. That stuck with me. So for 3 weeks, I've been using embodied wisdom to guide my decisions. And I've said no to 4 things that I would usually have said yes to. And I was just like, no, it didn't matter how much money it was worth. The energy wasn't there. It was instant. It was instant. I didn't ruminate for 2 or 3 days. I just said, body, what do you have for me, sister? Instant. And I offered a graceful no.
Eva, can you slow this down? I think this is really important.
Sure,
First off, that makes me so happy, and like, congratulations. That's so awesome. I'm curious, like, if you can slow down more specifically how your unique body wisdom speaks, like what was happening in your body that helped you to know that it was a no, rather than ruminating on it for a few days.
A tightness. Yeah. And I'm glad you're asking, because part of what we'd love for our viewers and watchers and listeners to tune into also is to learn from the stories and from the gifts that you have to offer. So this is a beautiful and welcome moment. A general tightness, as in almost like a no disrespect to those who sent the opportunities. I'm really grateful. They're just not aligning for me anymore. Mm-hmm. So there was almost an inner repulsion. And that's a very strong word for me to use. Yeah.
It's so accurate. Like, I had an experience recently with a client where in her world, behind the screen, on the other side of the Zoom screen, I felt a very specific energy shift that happened when her partner came home from work and entered into her same space while we were on a call. And immediately I started to feel hot and nauseous. And I'm learning again about my empathic nature, how my body doesn't just feel my own wisdom, but it feels others' wisdom as well. And I there's ways to be mindful of that. That's not sustainable for me to feel nauseous because someone else isn't attuned to their body. It's not okay for me to be processing someone else's feelings. And I also want to speak that to normalize it, that like, as you get deeper and deeper into embodiment work, the sensitivity, the gift, and it can become a curse without it being mastered, goes even beyond that, like even beyond what's a yes and what's a no for you, because we're social creatures. And I just love that you're acknowledging this repulsion in your body. And I just think we need to talk about it more, because for, I was going to say decades, centuries, since the time of the witch trials, I don't know, we've been gaslighting our own body's wisdom. We've been taught to not listen, right? And it's like, it's literally so dialed and can help you make such quick decisions.
Oh, yes.
Both the repulsion, the nausea I felt, and the like, yes. Oh. Like, to me, that feels like there's a flow of energy that moves through my crown, down through my body, like, and my whole system opens and relaxes, you know?
Yeah. So I have to pause everything here, because all I keep on thinking, Casey, is I'm dying to know, how did you get to be where you're at? So I'm not suggesting that you have all the answers, but you've certainly posed a lot of questions to the world, the universe, yourself. And what has been the journey? So for those that are viewing us, what has been the journey, and how did you get to be where we're at today?
Oh, I need to learn how to refine this story because it can get long, and I'm going to do my best to do that now. With the understanding that I have now, looking back retrospectively, I've always been a sensitive, intuitive, empathic kid who always sensed by way of the body, whether or not I was taught to trust it. So I was born that way. I was born into the world that way. I think in part because of that, I struggled with disordered eating at quite a young age. Yeah. And I actually think that's a really normal experience, whether it's disordered eating or drug use or alcohol, for sensitive, empathic, intuitive people who haven't been taught what that means and what they're able to sense and perceive. It can be overwhelming to be sensitive. And I think it's easy to have addiction issues or use substances or have like mental illnesses that come into play because of that sensitivity. For me, and you know, eating disorders are really complex. And for me, there was just a lot of stress, you know, in my family, bullying at school, a lot of factors that tied into that. And so I think this is true for many people who come to do embodiment work, that their journey to get there is disembodiment. Yep. and let me back that up even more, purpose-driven work. I feel like we find our purpose through our pain, through our trauma sometimes. So that's a natural part of the process. And certainly for me, disembodiment was a big part of what kicked off my journey. And I was an athlete growing up, and then had this summer where the disordered eating behaviors were really taking hold and my body was changing a lot. And I was in a track and field meet where I usually just like took home all the red ribbons. And I lost to the girl that I always beat every other year in the 100-meter, long jump, triple jump, everything. And I heard a voice inside of myself that was like, you're hurting yourself. And it was the very first time in my life that I connected food, eating, nourishment, exercise to strength and ability rather than just weight.
Yeah.
I was using food in a way to change my weight without realizing the impact it would have on my energy, my athletic performance, my capacity to feel strong. So this is, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. And I remember that night of the track and field meet where I was lying in bed. It was midnight. I couldn't sleep. And I felt this familiar feeling in my body that was just like hunger. I was hungry because I wasn't eating enough. And my eating disorder, or my head, the voice in my head was like, ignore it, go to sleep. And my body was just like, it almost had its own voice that was kind of like motherly and stern. And it was like, eat. And then I had this battle and there's growling in my stomach. And then it was like, eat. And I got out of bed and sat at the kitchen table while my whole family was sleeping. And let me just say too, this is on a farm in Saskatchewan, so there isn't really awareness of eating disorders. I sat at the kitchen table and I made myself a peanut butter sandwich and I ate the whole thing. And that pivotal moment was like my body had my back and I started a healing journey on my own. So my body saved my life in some ways. And since then, there have been very significant turning point moments where I've had a replicating type of experience, not necessarily disorder or illness to a point of healing, but definitely an embodied experience that brought in a source of wisdom that changed me or changed my direction. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, I can't put my finger on it. I think this is just the truth of people's genius gifts, whether they consider them genius at all. Most people don't even realize how special the thing that they do so naturally is. But one of my special gifts has been being connected to that voice and knowing it. And not only that, acting on it without much delay, trusting it. That's the part that I think is really, really hard for people. And for some reason, I can't not trust it. I can for a period of time, and then it just like yells at me and I have to follow it, even if I have no idea where it's going to lead me.
So what about the people that say, I don't have that. Don't have that. I don't have some kind of, my body's talking to me. I'm not feeling nauseous. I don't have what you were describing, Eva, around, this resistance. I don't have that. What would be your reaction to that?
Lies. So I'm going to infuse this with a little bit more of my own story. I went on to become a dietitian. I went on to study nutrition and food. And kind of along that same time, I fell into yoga. And so there was this kind of like, to me, my education in nutrition was still very heady. It was about the evidence and calculating macronutrients. And I found that fascinating because I had this interest in food. And then yoga kind of like deepened this connection with my body. And when I started my career as a dietitian and yoga teacher, I realized very quickly that what most people needed who came to me was not what they thought. It wasn't a meal plan for more weight loss to heal their emotional eating in the evening. It was actually like a reconnection with their body. And through the process of learning about intuitive eating and learning about the intersection of embodiment for simple simple, not easy, simple things like feeding ourselves physically, I started to learn more about or realize, babies root for milk when they're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
That's an embodied response. There's an instinct. How does a baby know how to eat? Why does a baby cry when they need something? Literally, since we come out of the womb, we are using our body's wisdom to guide decision-making. It's very primal. It's very intuitive. And everyone was a baby at some point. And then what happens is you're born into society, we're socialized. There's certain things that parents will sort of interject, which is a natural experience. But even something like hunger and fullness, that's connecting with an inner truth. That's connecting with a body wisdom. There's a growling stomach that indicates eat. What I realized through the pathway of working with food is when I would guide people into their bodies to help them know if they were hungry or full, because they had no idea, because they'd been following diets for decades, right? They had no idea what hunger felt like. And when they would reconnect with that, every time we'd come back to the body, it would just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And then they'd heal their relationship with their body and food, and also get out of a really unhealthy relationship and become more empowered as a single person, let's say, or leave a corporate career that was not in alignment and start a business. So to the person who's like, I don't have that, you do. And start by listening to your body if you're hungry or not. Get down to the simplest part, because what I've learned is it's kind of like one step leads to the next step. And then eventually down the line, there's a step that's like, here's what you're here on the planet for. Here's what the world needs you to do. And your body's guiding you to that. It's guiding you through every decision, the small ones and the big ones. And it's the same mechanism.
Can I just offer just my own little thing that's going on in my body right now as you're talking, particularly around that baby? I have goosebumps all over my body right now. I think you called them the truth tingles before, Casey. That makes sense to me. The baby, primal hungry, that's a connection. And to start at the place of hunger, am I hungry? Am I not? Is a great first step, I think, into getting into this embodiment work in which you're speaking. Sorry, Eva, you were about to say.
No, it's good. I no, it's interesting because as you shared some of your story, your deeply personal and vulnerable story. Thank you for openly putting it out there. I think you're spot on. There's more people who share in that story than will openly share, because it's so taboo. It's not a welcome subject, and yet various genders experience disordered numbing and disconnect to an inner calling. What do you observe in the world is causing such a disconnect to tuning into to body wisdom?
Decades of messaging to do so, I feel like ever since we come into a space of learning, we learn in a head-centered way. That's been the focus. And it's shifting. It's definitely shifting. So I think more and more people will be open to receiving messages about embodiment and learning how to do it. It's becoming more and more prominent, similar to how mindfulness was something that was Eastern philosophy. And then suddenly there's all this research about mindfulness. And then Google is implementing mindfulness practices among their team, and all these big corporate spaces are touting the benefits of mindfulness, right? It's becoming a cultural norm. Meditation has so much research around it. Embodiment's the next mindfulness. Embodiment is mindfulness turned on itself. Mindfulness is step back and be the observer and notice what you sense in your inner experience. Embodiment is go into the inner experience and receive the wisdom from it. So many more researchers are studying embodiment or somatic ways of healing, somatic meaning body-based. And I think our world is being primed for it. Like the tragedies of the world have created deep tension in people's bodies,
Yep.
you know? And also, you tell me if this is allowed on this podcast, but
Everything's allowed.
The deeper I go into embodiment, the deeper I go into spirituality.
Yeah.
And I think that with the crises of the world right now, I see it. I see it with clients. I see it with so many people. There's this like, okay, there's something missing from the way that we've been living, and people are, I think, yearning for a spiritual connection, and the body offers a gateway to spiritual connection as well, if you want to call it that. It could be totally scientific too. For me, my spirituality is deepening more and more and more the more I learn to love and trust my body.
Well, we kind of started there with the collective energy, right? And so you're talking about the world, and obviously we've got Ukraine and Russia, and probably like you both with the client work that I'm doing, there is a heaviness about people at the moment, a real heaviness about what's going on in the world. And you can only kind of, avert your eyes for a moment in time, but know that it's existing. So I'll tell you, I've been seeing a psychiatrist since actually we did an episode on trauma. I think it was episode 11 with Eva's friend Kirsten, it catapulted me to change behavior. And as I was preparing for that particular episode, psychiatrist, shaman, energy heal, I'm all in, right?
Yes.
And part of that is to just try to figure out what to do with some of the energy in which I'm feeling. And I think for a lot of the people that are tuning in today, they're looking for like tips, like how do I tune into this? And so I think your start about going into, am I hungry, am I not, I think is a great start. But what other advice would you give, particularly, and I'm going to go into a different direction, around leadership? So some of the work that Eva and I do are centered exclusively with leadership teams. So is there an opportunity for leaders to somehow digest these kind of woo topics, I think, for some of them, and actually take some of these practices into their teams?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just appreciate the way that you introduced this topic, because of course, I think similar to mindfulness, right? Woo! And then it becomes grounded. There still is some of that perspective. And I'm giving myself a challenge to just like not refer to any of it as woo, because it's super practical, Yeah. And it's really, really effective for leaders to learn practices of embodiment to enhance their leadership and to do leadership differently. So I'm writing a book right now called The Embodied Leader, and it's really about helping people to, have more resilience, nurture connection, find purpose, lead from the inside out. And one of the gifts of writing this book, co-writing this book with two other authors, is finding ways to make this work accessible for leaders. And we're almost done writing the entire manuscript, and we're sending it out to people and getting feedback from, a friend of mine who's a partner with Ernst & Young in New York City. And, Eva, I know you read part of the book, and, all these different types of leaders, entrepreneurs. And I think that they're really starting to see where the old way wasn't working. So for example, let me get more specific. I talked about in my journey to embodiment, it started with disembodiment. A leader who will become interested in embodied leadership has had an experience that has rocked them from disembodiment to the interest of embodiment. What do I mean by that? Leaders who are going through burnout, they literally can't get up in the morning, are experiencing depression, or just can't seem to get their energy back, or don't feel like themselves. My friends, these are symptoms of burnout, which is a result of not having an embodied leader approach, right? And that's a very physical perspective. But then think about think about a world with war. War to me happens with disembodied leaders.
Yeah.
The leadership that is normal right now is a disembodied type of leadership. If people were embodied and knew how to hold space for themselves, and what I mean by that is like, we're able to be with a tightness in their chest because something feels off, instead of projecting that onto someone else or having a drink every time they feel uncomfortable. If we were able to be uncomfortable within our own microcosm that is our body, we would learn to be uncomfortable together with another person. We would learn how to be uncomfortable in a team and stay with it long enough for a wisdom to be revealed. The body is also always offering a deeper truth, a deeper wisdom, whether it feels comfortable or not. And so that microcosm, if a leader learns that practice, they engage in a process of self-mastery, because they not only have access to wisdom that is from the neck up, they have access to all this wisdom, including the body consciousness, the wisdom that comes through their body. So they become more masterful at being. They handle more discomfort, they handle more, they can know what they need sooner. Just like you, Eva, right? You felt this like, oh, it nauseates me, that's a no. Imagine if the leader of our country had that wisdom to be like, ooh, this feels like a no to me. What does it feel like for you? And our teams were connected to that level of wisdom. We would get to truth quicker. We'd waste less energy. We'd do in 2 hours what most people do in 8. We would be more heart-centered. We'd know how to hold space for our emotions and our feelings, and we'd let ourselves process grief instead of packing it up in a box and putting it somewhere and then taking it out on our teams, being triggered into a state of anger, you know? And I'm going to pause because I don't know if this is landing.
It's absolutely landing. And I'm almost seeing this total duality of what so many of us have cultivated by nature of what we've created as a civilization, and what's possible if we just open up the door, open up the channel, create permission for self, create permission for other. And when you talk about anything from managing discomfort in a decision, through to grief, through to a decision around war, that to me is extremely powerful. And so what do you think is holding us back, and what do we need to tune into for a shift in collective consciousness in future?
I think fear of the mystery. We're scared of ourselves. Like, embodiment practiced in an individual creates more integration, wholeness, wellness, which ultimately creates more joy, more of these positive, high consciousness, high vibration, for lack of a better word, right? When we're more integrated and we're more whole, it's easier for women to celebrate each other instead of compete with one another. Bringing it back to that example, right? And that's true for any individual, whatever gender, doesn't matter. I don't know if this is connected, but it's coming through right now. People are carrying a lot. I'm noticing that men right now are, I'm feeling a lot of men's unprocessed trauma. And it makes sense. There's a war. There's like, on the macro and the micro, there's a similar experience. And in that, there's like an opening to healing, you know, like when I just see that there's an opening to healing by way of the body. I forget your original question. I just totally went.
It's all connected. I mean, ultimately what's going on.
Brain.
No, we all find each other. I guess I'm curious about what's possible for a shift in consciousness. And I think it kind of answers by nature of what you've already shared. It's my hunch is there's a significant shift in consciousness that's possible. And by consciousness, I don't mean just brain consciousness.
Yeah.
A collective full body wisdom that we're capable of within self, in healing, in relationship with other, in problem solving, in creativity, in supporting humanity, non-humans, environment, all of it. That's my hunch, if we could open up this doorway. And I think it's quite powerful. What do you think?
It requires moving through our fear of the mystery. Body consciousness is mysterious and unknown. And because the body and the nervous system kind of stores trauma, there's going to be discomfort there. Mm-hmm. And we're wired to not want to feel pain. So in order to open up the door, the benefit of doing the hard work of being with discomfort has to outweigh the risk of not tapping into body wisdom, you know? And that risk might look like, in very practical terms, it might look like a person who's on their 4th marriage and they just can't seem to get it right. You know, I wonder why. There could be lots of reasons for that, but like we play out these patterns when we don't heal deeper. And so someone, again, back to what makes people change, usually it's some sort of awakening. They burnt out, they have a health issue, their partner dumps them, leaves them, cheats on them. They are a workaholic and they realize that their kids don't really want to hang out with them. What's happening there? It's like a trigger for more healing. And so it's kind of like, do you want the initial discomfort of doing the healing work, of being with your body, in favor of a more expansive, more authentic long-term outcome? Mm-hmm. Or do you want the discomfort of pain that persists over the long term in unconscious patterns?
And so what if let's say Carolyn and I do a bunch of healing work. Mm-hmm. And we're both into healing work and ongoing, all of it. And we share a lot. Mm-hmm. So let's say we work through a bunch of things and then we start to notice adverse reactions from other people. What planet are you on? Excuse me, I'm listening to my body. And
excuse me, listening to my body at the moment.
And this is what my body is saying. So I'm out of here.
Right.
I mean, that's a really obtuse example, but I could
Maybe
see
know
how
your audience.
Yeah, right? I could see how we could have these moments out there in the world by being vulnerable and cultivating these strengths, this inner wisdom. But then how do you bridge that with others? Because if you do it in leadership, you're going to do it in the world, at home and in community.
Totally.
I suspect it's a whole person philosophy, and a significant opportunity in leadership too. But how do you bridge doing that work, opening that up, and still feeling a sense of belonging out there in the world?
Hard truth. When people start to deepen into embodiment work, they discover everything that wasn't really true about their lives. And it's very normal for divorces and breakups to happen, for people to change their life in a way that leaves their old network behind, in a way where they lose something. Yeah. It's just a hard truth. So I want to say that first. And why do people do it? Well, they do it because there is nothing better than belonging to yourself. There's nothing better than listening to your own soul's voice. That is like, I don't know. I feel like that's what we're here on the planet for, to an extent, right? Is to actually learn self-love.
Ooh. I have a question, but I know Carolyn, I feel like you have a question, and
I got a million. I don't know if you see me. I'm like, and by the way, I write it down because I think that way. So again, for the people going, why is she making so much? Someone asked me that the other day. I said, that's how I think. I think by writing.
Me too. And I draw pictures and I doodle, but I'm actually very here. Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to one of the questions that you posed around the collective consciousness and energy. And one of the things that came to mind, I'd love to get both your opinions on this. And Eva, I don't even think we've talked about this. Uh-oh, that's massive.
Putting you on the spot.
Immediately what came to mind was the term oneness. So looking at the world as we are all connected. So we just started with, whether we're going to use this or not, with Casey putting up a card, and it was the thread. And I'm now sensing the thread in oneness. So one could, finger wag at somebody else for not showing up and whatever. But I don't know, maybe this is old age, maybe this is enlightenment, maybe this is maturity. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm starting down the path of looking at each person as part of me. Whoa, right? We're all connected. And even with the evil in the world, you could pull out a Putin, you could pull out a whatever, you could pull out an ex-husband, a friend that you don't like, and could finger wag. But they all are one of us. We're all coming from the same source and deserve, it's not a lack of accountability. They certainly have to take accountability, but have obviously experienced a ton of trauma in their life. So I think the collective, to make a long story short, that collective energy that we're trying to shift. And this is a big call to action, but I think we all have a responsibility around shifting this energy, is looking within and recognizing that we are all one.
Totally. That oneness, like when we really think about it, I had someone go, but someone said, I hate Putin. Yes, I'm actually going here. I hate Putin, someone said. And what I'm really trying to cultivate is deep, it's well beyond, because my body fights it, but I'm trying to hold deep compassion for someone who there's something so unwell in someone who can do such. And so I struggle in the oneness, going, I ain't no one with Putin. And yet there's a duality, because I hear you, and I acknowledge there is a oneness, but there is this divide it's just an inner working that I'm sifting through, because I philosophically get it and I love it, and I think so I immediately want to go to a safe place and go, I'll be one with those Gandhi, with
Mother Teresa,
with Lama, with you two, and with other loved ones, and with a conscious energy.
Yeah.
And yet I hear what you're saying. That's a tough one. Can I go to something you shared, Casey, once in conversation?
I don't know, can you?
Well, because you said earlier today, you said my body saved my life. And I felt like a heat, a warmth, and I'm like, oh gosh, that's big. And in an earlier conversation, you said, I love my body. And I wish so many of us could just truly love our bodies. And I'm curious about how you came to love your body and the connection to embodiment and wisdom there, what that does for you.
Yeah, I think similar to how healing works, body love happens bits over time, like you don't just wake up one day and it's like, oh, although just saying that, I remember a moment where, this might be TMI, I don't know. I came out of the shower and I was like looking at myself in the mirror, and I decided that the dimples in my thighs I was going to love. I just saw them differently. Like there was one day where I just decided this thing that I was always like insecure about, self-conscious. It was like, it didn't matter. Even when I was like tiny with disordered eating, I just had these like folds in the backs of my thighs. And this is maybe for the women, it's maybe for the men, it's maybe for everyone feels these things or has a thing, right? And I just remember seeing it differently one day, and it kind of blew my mind, and I felt empowered, like, holy crap, I get to choose if this is beautiful. I get to choose. Oh my God, who told me this? There was something wrong with this, you know? So that's like an example of like maybe one of those moments that builds over time. And I think that's a relatable moment, maybe speaking as a woman, perhaps for a woman, where, you know, I witnessed so much fight in body image, body experience. Like women are lots of the time on diets, or we're trying to change our bodies, etc. And I feel like for me, that was kind of the superficial part of body love. You know, that's like the outside, like, do I like the look of my body? You know?
Yeah.
And in the intuitive eating body positivity space, there's a lot of talk of body neutrality. Like, don't worry about loving your body, just like neutrality, like feel neutral. The idea of non-judgment, stripping away judgment from your perception of your body. And I think that's a helpful step on the journey. I'm kind of like, no, like the bar should be higher. Let's go for all out body love. Because if our body is going to guide us to our most potent decisions, our deepest purpose, our greatest life in this incarnation, depending on what you believe, in this relatively like really short time on the planet, like, why would we stop at just feeling kind of neutral towards our bodies? To me, it's like a reverence. It's like this body, this is where spirituality comes in. It's divine. Like this is a divine part of how my soul gets to move around in the world. If I didn't have this body, I literally wouldn't be a human on the planet right now, you know? And I'm a human on the planet right now at this very unique time, talking to the two of you. And like, I don't know, that just kind of brings me to this sense of awe and wonder. Of course I love my body, you know?
And may I ask, do you ever have periods of kind of retraction? So I'm thinking about the universe and social media and airbrushing, and nobody actually looks like what they look like, you know? Do you ever have moments where you have to kind of check yourself and go, maybe those dimples are bugging me today? Or once you've made that shift, the shift has happened?
I think it's so normal to have the like retraction moment. And I haven't had that in a really long time. It doesn't even cross my mind. And I think it's because like after it started young for me, hating my body, right? And after so many years of being distracted by not liking my body and by dieting, like what a distraction, you know? It's like, I'd much rather use that energy for meaningful change, connection, purpose, etc. So I don't really even think about it anymore. And I think that's rare. I think it's really normal to like it be a spiraling journey. I just feel like that journey, the part of my karma around that journey is pretty complete. There are other things that will trigger me, say from social media, that will kind of take me into my not enough spiral, but it's not the look of my body.
Well, I can tell you that statement, that little section that we've done around I love my body has changed me. I've just had a different dialogue shift and said, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?
Say more.
Well, I think like many women, people, not just women, people, you know, you look at different aspects and say, I gotta change that. I gotta do this. I gotta, do more on the treadmill. And you saying, I just don't think that way anymore, and it's a choice, is something clicked. So I choose to not do that anymore.
Oh my God, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Well, there is because we can be so cognitively driven and gotta do my workout 5 days a week. That's totally been me for years. Gotta be active every day. And, and then, for example, this morning, a couple of things just shifted, went off schedule, came up, whatever, and I couldn't do it. I'm like, God, my entire day. I love the energy that it gives me. And that is a real thing. I know that it's good. It's part of honoring my body. So there is that balance, but instead of resisting it, I actually took a moment and I'm like, body, are you okay with this? Or do you need to program the day so that you can fit it in later on? And my body just said, could you just give me a break today? And I'm like, all right, you got it, sister. So I think letting go of that attachment has taken years, but that's an example of, I think, what you're threading through. And I also, that's right. I'm really, speaking of threading through meaning, the concept of genius and the concept of purpose. I think you've touched on, the being embodied allows those things to come forth. So when we're in embodiment, then we may let go of the things that aren't working for us. It's clearing a path.
Yes.
For genius to emerge, for purposeful living to emerge. Am I on the right track? And what would you add, edit?
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's part of healing or trauma related work is clearing away the veils that aren't the truth of you, the like soul of you. They're this conditioned hurt part, like protective mechanism. I do this with my hands. I'm thinking about, in all of my yoga trainings, there's often this analogy of the onion, right? There's like the core of the onion and all these different layers. And, in yoga, we talk about like peeling away the layers of the onion, but that can apply to any healing practice, any practice, trauma work. Not even, people often are like, I don't have trauma. Let's call it learned ways of being that aren't authentic to you. We could call it that. When we clear away those parts, the layers of the onion, there's like a pure center there. And it's kind of like, I'm going to connect in this topic of oneness. It's sort of like, okay, we all come from the same source. Let's say at this really high level of consciousness, I am you and you are me and we are Putin and this is this, right?
Yeah.
And we're all one, but then why would we be split in these like individual, like billions of bodies? Like, why would we be split and not have one person exactly like another if it weren't to maybe split the oneness into an opportunity for each of us to do a certain role?
Yep.
Maybe to connect us back with the oneness.
It's like a puzzle piece. We're all a different puzzle piece. Yep. That's exactly how I see it.
Very interesting.
Say more.
Yeah, I think we're all here for predetermined destiny, whatever we're supposed to fulfill. And I think a lot of people don't really sit in, what is my role? It's my existential angst. I've talked about this before. Like, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? Is the answer to the universe 42? Like all that stuff. And I think the real work for us is to figure out why we're here in our own little puzzle piece, so that when we connect to one, we are really contributing in a meaningful way. We're getting deep here today.
Oh, I love it so much.
I think that was sort of bound to happen.
Right?
Like Casey, you said, is it TMI? No. I mean, is it TMI to say that I'm just going to go stand on my balcony naked after this and be like, I love my body.
I hope you do.
Well, we can't do it right. Casey and I are both in Calgary and Eva is in Victoria. We just had a massive snowstorm here, so I don't think I'll be jumping out into the backyard.
I'm getting so passionate through this conversation, which means my body temperature increases. So I would love to roll around in the snow right now.
I've done it. I have done it. When I lived in Calgary, there's a very dear friend, and we challenged one another and we went and did snow angels in bathing suits. And I have to tell you, it was very, very empowering.
Oh, nice.
For those who, I suspect there's an underlying question for people, and certainly for me. I don't know about you, Carolyn, but how does someone begin to open up these pathways? Where do we begin?
Well, we did talk about one way to begin earlier, and that would be the way that we get into embodiment is through practicing it. So just like meditation is a practice to be done consistently to help someone become more mindful, A consistent embodiment practice can be a way for someone to become more embodied in their day-to-day, right? And so I'm going to bring this back to food and eating, because like, if you're human, most humans eat every day. Not everyone, for sure. And there's a consistency to that. In fact, some of us eat 3 or 4 or 6 times a day. And there's like an opportunity in the consistency that's already built into the day to add in a moment to check in. So one of the things that I would invite people into as a dietitian was, you know, if we think of your hunger like a gas tank where 0 is empty and 10 is full, where are you on that scale before you eat your meal? Now, it requires a slowing down. You can't do that and be distracted, right? You just can't. Like, there has to be a slowing down. So that could be one way to connect with the body. Another way I'm just feeling called to share right now is the body acronym exercise is a tool that I created that really informed my TED Talk. And I have a audio recording of like how to move through the body acronym exercise. So the body acronym B stands for breathe. So if you just did one part of the body acronym exercise, you'd be practicing embodiment. So just to connect with your breath is connecting inward. That's like such an important first step. O is observe. And what I mean by that is observe sensation. Sensation could be a pulsing, tingling, the chills that Carolyn felt earlier, the disgusted sense you felt in your body, Eva, with that decision. It could be expansion, contraction, tightness. You don't have to name it. Lots of the time, this is what makes it difficult, is like body wisdom can kind of like go beyond the language that we have, but just to tune in and observe a felt experience. The D of the body acronym exercise is delay. So remember when I said, if we all just were able to pause around some of our discomfort, maybe we'd be able to hold space for one another and talk to people who disagree with us, you know? Maybe we wouldn't have such a separation issue right now. So delaying is so, so important. So you're observing, I feel a little tight in my chest right now. Don't fix it, just feel it. Can I just like breathe and stay with it, even if it's for an extra 5 seconds?
Yeah.
And then the Y of the body acronym exercise is say yes. So in the delay, there might be a moment of inquiry where it's like, all right, body, like, what do you need? What wisdom are you revealing? You know, think about this. It's cold. The body shivers. You go get a sweater. That's listening to your body, right? The stomach growls. You go eat food. You listen to it. You eat food. I feel like each time you're doing that, you're putting like a dollar in the jar. You're building like a trust bank. You're building your capacity to trust your body for even bigger experiences. So the body acronym exercise is a practice that could become a daily thing where you could listen to it and just go through it, and it could be helpful for you. And then it becomes so natural that you do it on a whim. There's a million other places where you could start, but maybe I'll stop there.
I think that's a really helpful, tangible thing that people could take away from this. Body observe delay, yes, right? Like, I love that. And it's in your TED Talk, so people should tune in and watch that. By the way, how was that experience as I embark on my own adventure over there?
Well, the embodied way to do any creative process is to let the creative process turn you inside out and upside down, I feel. So it was a journey leading up to the talk. And to me, that's where so much of the value was, you know, like the process. The result being on the stage was awesome. I actually felt, I said to myself before stepping out there, like, if I'm in my body, the right words will come through.
Yep.
And my friend Morgan and I, we were both on the same stage that day. We had a song that we would dance to before any sort of practice or rehearsal or whatever. And we were backstage just like moving and grooving. And then before I went out, I closed my eyes and took some breaths and dropped into my body, and then went on the stage and knelt down and closed my eyes. And that moment was for me, and it was also an embodied invitation for the audience to take a breath. They heard me take a breath, and I could feel people take a breath. And when the talk actually happened, it just felt like I was channeling. It felt like it had never come out that way before.
The thread.
Exactly. Yeah. And the words, like I changed a part of the talk right in the middle of it. And it was, I think, the most important change that I made.
And what was that?
It was, you'll see it. You can see it when you watch it. There's a moment where like there's tears at the backs of my eyes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the camera zooms in, and it's about acceptance, compassion, and love. When we have acceptance and compassion and love for our bodies and our inner experience, we have more acceptance, compassion, and love in the world.
You know, what's interesting, because I rewatched it yesterday as preparation for this talk, and I know exactly the part that you're talking about.
Yeah. But that's what embodiment offers us. It's like an access to a different, the most authentic, like a different truth. For me, it's like an access to a message where I'm not thinking. It just gets to come through. But I've had lots of practice in trusting myself. And we can only do that when we feel safe in our bodies. Like I've done so much public speaking, and I did this one Zoom experience with a group of people that just like weren't my people. It was for a career counseling thing at a university. And there was like a whole bunch of people on the screen. Time wasn't really taken to the introduction was off. It was just a moment, a teachable moment for like how not to initiate a conversation. And in it, I like started talking, and then I literally like left my body. I had a panic attack in the experience. And it was because it wasn't safe. These aren't the people that make me feel safe to speak my authentic truth, you know? And this was like a year ago, after TED, after, you know? And I just like, I completely froze. And thank goodness there's a term called co-regulation in the like nervous system embodiment sphere. And it just means like we regulate together with others. Thank goodness for this man, probably in his 70s, who was on the call, who at first I was like, oh God, these aren't my people. This person is not going to be open to this experience. Thank goodness for him, who unmuted himself. And he was like, I froze giving a talk once to these students, and I wasn't even wearing pants, he says, because it was Zoom. So and he broke the ice, and it like
got you out of that, what I call fuzzy head. Yeah,
totally. But
anyway. I like you. I mean, I speak a lot in front of people, and I even now to this day will bomb. And when you were just talking about, I mean, solidly bomb. And when you were talking about it's generally because of that insecurity or that non-safe space, and you can feel that energy, and you get out, you get catapulted out of your own self. And no matter how you talk to yourself, you can't get yourself back in. So I love that as an illustration. I think we're nearing the end. I can't believe like over an hour has now transpired, right?
Easy.
Was anybody else feel like they were in flow for this whole time?
Oh, I just love the two of you. I feel so safe with you to be myself. Thank you.
Oh, no. No, thank you, Casey. I think that I know I've learned a lot. And when I say I've learned a lot, let me put some anchors around that. There's actually things I'm going to do differently as a result of this conversation. And that's the greatest gift I can only give to myself, but to you. And knowing that your words have actually mattered in a profound way. So how we like to kind of finish things off with Pithy Musings is kind of top tips. And I don't know if I can offer a top tip. I can tell you what I'm going to change as a result of this conversation. I don't think this is woohoo. You said this is not woohoo. And I think even I have a tendency when we go into these spheres to go woohoo. And you know what? I think it solidifies that this is important discussion, and to wrap it around something in a way that doesn't honor it, I will no longer do. I am going to go out and shoot from wherever, not in the snow, but I'm going to really have a different perspective around my body and love it the way you love yours. I think how we started off, I have a lot of learnings here, where you said lies. You know, we are all connected to your bodies. I want our people that are tuning in to remember that. And the final tangible thing that I've learned is the BODY acronym. So body, observe, delay, and yes. So thank you. Eva, we'll turn it to you last, Eva. Eva, what resonated for you today?
Well, I've had the gift of being really curious about somatic work, and working with my personal board of directors, as we might call them, to go deeper in my practice of being human and my practice of let's say coaching, for example. And I have really, and I'm still working on it, cultivating listening to the message of the fourth channel, I call it, which is my body. So if, let's say, I'm working with a mentor coach to work on my coaching ability, this is so simple, it's so obvious, but if ever I'm here, I'm not here. And so I practice that regularly to just, and I think not just in coaching, I think in anything any one of us are doing, we can just, if we stop relying so much on this, we're limiting ourselves here. And I'm learning over time, and you're validating so much of this in any conversation that I've had the gift of having with you and today, that we're opening up so much more possibility to create and to contribute and to serve and to be, and that just feels healthier and more purpose aligning. In comes the thread. So it's validating, and you've built on it with some other ideas that, like, I feel like I work so much in the purpose space too with people, but you're giving a different lens to it. So yeah, I'm just really grateful. I find your energy to be quite profound and big and soulful and generous and gracious. And I think we've talked about the word mystic. And I don't think it's woo-woo at all. I think it's real. I think that you have that. And my wish for the world is that you keep going and sharing what you're sharing, because I think we do have the capability as a collective to grow consciousness, to bring us back to oneness that's healthier. I know that's my word, but
I love that.
My wish.
I'm feeling called to read the reading for this card to end it out, to go full circle. Would you be open to that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, let me find this baby. All right. This is from, I should say, this is like an oracle deck. I love it because it's about archetypes. It's from Kim Kranz. You know, and when we were talking about like oneness and Putin, it's kind of like, you know, shadow work is realizing that all of the archetypes, however we might judge them, live in each human. And so it can be really interesting and healing I use these as a tool for people to just connect with their inner wisdom or intuition, more than anything. But all right, here's the thread. So there's 3 words at the top: the path, the vein, the circuit. Life is a tangle. So much happens simultaneously and circuitously, leaving us grappling for meaning and direction in a network of distractions. When we connect to the energy of the thread, however, we strike the deepest vein in the body. Our whole being responds to its tug. Meaning is pumped through our bloodstream. Our mind and spirits are lifted. We remember who we are and what we came into this world to do. Though this happens on the most profound level, it could be the simplest incident that activates the thread, a song, an image, a conversation heard in passing. No matter how confusing and multi-layered our modern lives become, if we are connected to the thread, we are free. Being tethered to it is the only anchor our heart requires.
Again, with the my body reacted to that. With that, Casey, we want to again extend our heartiest appreciation and gratitude for your energy and your time in investing with us today. You know, to deep breath, man. So, Eva, do you want to close it out?
Sure. Yes. And I also, in Casey's language, feel called to say that acronym is fantastic. And I too am interested to play with it. I want to share it with some family members and some friends. And I don't want to share it with the world because I think the world needs it. And I think often with these podcasts we do, people will come back to us and go, I want to know the how. I want to know something that I can take from this and I can try this afternoon, tonight. And that's just a beautiful way to try it. So thank you. Okay. Last guest, we're just going to throw in a little curveball. So last guest we had, her name was Dion Schaffner. Dion was amazing. She is the Chief Diversity Officer of a software company called Aurea in the States. So she has a question for you, not knowing who our next guest would be.
Whoa.
And so the question is,
well, do you want to play first of all?
Yes. Consent. We like to get consent first. Do you want to play in this little zone before we close it out?
Oh, you're so sweet for asking for consent. Of course I want to play.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell your 10-year-old self?
I love you.
Oh.
Not a moment's hesitation in that answer.
Yeah. I was about to go, oh, I love you too, Casey. Oh, right.
I love you, Eva. I love you, Carolyn.
I love you, Casey.
I love you, Carolyn.
I love you, Eva.
And also, like, you already know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I do.
It's like the work is actually just remembering, like coming back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Casey, you get to, if you want to play, share a question that you want to ask our next guest.
It's weird. The question that came to me immediately, similar to the I love you. And I'm questioning it because I'm like, Carolyn will probably ask it already, but like, how did you get here? And I feel like that's maybe up for interpretation, even if it is asked already about an origin story. There's something there. How did you get here?
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you. Thank you for generous energy, wisdom. You're being in the world. Keep going. Full support. And if anybody wants to get a hold of Casey, you can find her at casey@worthyandwell.com. You can find her on her website, Let Your Body Lead. Again, that's where her podcast link is on, and that TED Talks, which I've watched about 3 times. I absolutely love it. And it will, I'm just going to say, it will move you. Watch it. It will move you. Mug draw, if you want one, a deliciously large, hydrating Pithy Musings mug. Share the episode. It could be on Facebook. It could be on Instagram. It could be on LinkedIn. Just tag us. You can tag Carolyn. You can tag me. You can tag both of us. We'll do a random draw and we will send you one. And stay tuned for the next episode. We're not going to tell you who the next guest is, but if today has intrigued you, continue to be intrigued because we're going there. Carolyn, over to you.
Yeah, just in parting, I started the episode again with saying we have 125 subscribers. We want more. So hit that subscribe button, please. Have feedback, ideas, questions. We really do look at all of that, and that informs the content that you're seeing, is the feedback in which you provided. Eva can be found at livewithfervor.com. I can be found at talktalk.ca. So with that, until next time, here we go.
Stay pithy
and keep musing. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.